Hannibal, who is a great military strategist in ancient Roman age. Very outstanding military talent, great general, terror of the Romans. His clever tactics are still taught in some military academies. This video will show it that about him. Hannibal was one of the sons of Hannibal Barca, a Carthaginian leader, who joined the battle against Rome. After Carthage's defeat in the First Punic War, Hannibal set out to improve his family's and Carthage's fortunes. His father once let him swear that treat Roman as enemies forever, this influence him in lifetime and promote his future. With the death of his father and brother-in-law, who died in the war which fight with Romans, he inherited command of the army. After he assumed command, Hannibal spent 2 years consolidating his holdings and completing the conquest of Hispania, south of the Ebro. In his first campaign, Hannibal attacked and stormed the Alcaides' strongest center, Elythia, which promptly led to their surrender, and brought Punic power close to the river Tagus. His following campaign in 220 BC was against the Vaccii to the west, where he stormed the Vaccine strongholds of Helmintis and Arbukala. On his return home, laden with many spoils, a coalition of Spanish tribes, led by the Carpatani, attacked, and Hannibal won his first major battlefield success and showed off his tactical skills at the Battle of the River Tagus. Rome, fearing the growing strength of Hannibal in Iberia, made an alliance with the city of Saguntum, which lay a considerable distance south of the river Ebro, and claimed the city as its protectorate. Hannibal not only perceived this as a breach of the treaty signed with Hasdrubal, but as he was already planning an attack on Rome, this was his way to start the war. So he laid siege to the city, which fell after 8 months. Hannibal sent the booty from Saguntum to Carthage, a shrewd move which gained him much support from the government. Rome sent a delegation to question Hannibal for destroying Saguntum, Carthage defended the law, and Rome chose war. Hannibal's deeds are mainly reflected in the Second Punic War. In that time, Carthage lost the First War. The Roman navy grew stronger day and day. Hannibal tried to attack Rome in an unexpected way, which was through the Alps mountain from Spanish to the northern Italy, attack from the Italian rear. This reflects his strategic ingenuity. The reason, which is overcome the strong navy of Rome, avoid the battle in Mediterranean and taking advantage of Rome's unpreparedness to attack the northern city-states. He chose to march in October, when a cold season hard to do in Alps, but he did. A crazy decision of his. Also because that he thought Romans wouldn't felt he would do in the time when close to winter and attack them when they hadn't had prepare. It takes enough courage to decide this. Hannibal crossed the Pyrenees and Alps into Italy in 218 BC. His army included 10,000 joined Celts. Prior to this, he successfully conquered Spain and rose to prominence following the assassination of the Carthaginian general Hasdrubal in 221 BC. He chose to cross the Alps in order to surprise and avoid the main force of Rome. During this march, he defeated local opposition, successfully crossed the Alps, entered Italy, and began the campaign against Rome. Battle of Cannae is the largest honor of him. After Hannibal arrived in Italy, he attacked some Roman city-states. With their powerful army and the surrendered Gauls, they fought together. Some Roman city-states were defeated. When Rome learned it was no longer in an advantageous position, it chose to evacuate, which let these city-states flee. Prepare the army at the same time. Hannibal had a stalemate with Rome for some time. Everyone knew there would be war. In the spring of 216 BC, Hannibal captured the important supply depot at Cannae, forcing the Roman army into a difficult situation. After the election, the Roman Senate appointed the consuls Varro and Paulus and formed a large army, estimated at 50,000 to 80,000 men. The two armies met on the left bank of the Orphitus, and the consuls took turns in command. Hannibal took advantage of the impatience of the Romans and lured them into traps through siege tactics. He narrowed the battlefield and weakened Rome's numerical advantage. Place the least reliable infantry in the center, forming a semicircle to lure the Romans into pursuit. Using the Gallic and Numidian cavalry on his flanks, Hannibal launched a fierce attack that overwhelmed the Roman army. Hannibal's siege tactics were a huge success. His cavalry crushed the Roman cavalry, and the Numidian and Gallic cavalry on the flanks defeated the Roman heavy cavalry. Eventually, the Roman army was surrounded and unable to escape. With excellent tactics, Hannibal succeeded in destroying a large number of Roman troops despite being outnumbered, resulting in 50,000 to 70,000 casualties or prisoners. After the Battle of Cannae, Hannibal launched a series of clever military operations in Italy, but due to lack of sufficient aid and resources, he was unable to continue to pose a threat to Rome. Despite winning a series of smaller battles, he ultimately failed to achieve his main objective due to his inability to breach the Roman walls. During this time, Hannibal tried to win over allies, but many Italian city-states were hesitant to support him. In addition, Carthago's resources were gradually depleted and unable to provide the continued support Hannibal needed. Ultimately, the Carthago Senate decided to shift its main efforts to other parts of the Mediterranean where the threat to Rome was more pressing. In 203 BC, Hannibal was recalled to North Africa to fight against the Roman attack. During the Third Punic War at Cannae, he encountered the forces of the Roman general Scopius at the Battle of Zama and was ultimately defeated. Hannibal's army and elephants were defeated in a fierce battle, marking the end of his war career in North Africa. Although Hannibal escaped with his life after the defeat, he was unable to reverse Carthago's fate. Eventually, Carthago was defeated in the Third Punic War and forced to accept harsh peace terms. In the years that followed, Hannibal became an exile, traveling from place to place, seeking refuge and support. However, his political opponents continued to pursue him, making his life troubled. In 181 BC, facing pursuit from hostile political enemies, Hannibal chose to commit suicide to avoid becoming a prisoner of the enemy. He once swore that treat Romans as enemy forever, he had done it. This once great general ended his life in a tragic way, leaving behind a complex and legendary historical legend. His strategic genius and tenacious resistance to Rome became one of the classics of ancient warfare. Hannibal was renowned for his strategic acumen, especially in the use of force and terrain. His strategic thinking often surpassed that of other generals at the time. Hannibal's military strategies and tactics influenced many subsequent military leaders. His outstanding strategic thinking, especially his tactics in terrain utilization and encirclement warfare, became a classic example of later military science. His tactical skills and flexibility provided valuable lessons to subsequent military commanders. His feat of crossing the Alps demonstrated his determination and courage in the face of difficult and complex conditions. This march demonstrated to later military strategists the importance of overcoming natural obstacles. Hannibal posed a great threat to Rome. He defeated the Roman army in succession at the Battle of Calais and Cannae. His presence forced Rome to change its strategy and adopt a more flexible approach to countering him. Hannibal's marches across the Alps brought his army and Rome into contact with different cultures and peoples. The expedition promoted cultural exchange and fostered connections and understanding between different regions. The cross-cultural army he led also promoted cultural integration to a certain extent. Something interests. Legend has it that Hannibal once crossed the Alps with a large amount of gold. Although there is no conclusive evidence for this, the legend has inspired speculation about Hannibal's treasure and has been the subject of some archaeological treasure hunts. Hannibal was considered a thorn in Rome's side, and there is even a legend that Roman mothers would warn their children during evening prayers by saying, "Be careful, Hannibal is coming." Hannibal was renowned for his military prowess and won admiration for his tactical and strategic innovations as well as his many victories over Rome. His military talent made him an excellent military commander. The crossing of the Alps was an amazing adventure that demonstrated his courage and determination. That's enough to consider him a hero. However, the war led by Hannibal resulted in tens of thousands of deaths and massive destruction. This was questioned. Alright, the video of today is end. Thanks everyone.